Thanks, Nick. Thank you, everyone, and thanks, HunterNet. I think this is a fantastic initiative. And when this was first presented to me, James Hunt, who's one of my colleagues and is here with me tonight, he did this session last year talking about strategic management. And when I knew of the concept of HunterNet for many years, but I wasn't very familiar with what you guys or what HunterNet actually does. But when he spoke about the Future Leaders Program, this is something definitely that we have to do. Us as a university have to support this. And the little snippet that you've been given for your major assignment, so Nick did share that with me, and about dealing with the brain drain, I think, where's Nick? Nick, that's a nice summary, a little snippet of what it's essentially about, but how do we stop a lot of the talent leaving the region? That's something I'm actually quite passionate about. That's something I think about all the time. As being head of the group, Marketing and Tourism Group, that's something that I think about all the time. Not that I'm trying to keep all of our students here, but try to help the economic activity thrive and survive here in the region, and how us as a business school can help in that. But what I've got for you tonight is just prepared some content talking about strategic marketing principles and frameworks, going through some examples, some case studies that hopefully you can take away. But the interesting thing about a lot of the topic I'm talking about with tonight is you all have some experience with this. You're all consumers. So it's not like I'm talking about very abstract, very difficult content that maybe you have no experience in. So a lot of the cases that I'm talking about, you may be actual consumers of them. And in some cases, I think you're employees of one brand in particular that I'll be talking a little bit about to illustrate some points. But in terms of what I'm going to talk about tonight, so in terms of the agenda, I'll sort of more expand on a bit of background about myself, but just what is this notion of marketing? I know a lot of you are familiar with this, but I just want to challenge some of those perceptions and maybe some of those stereotypes that you may have about what is marketing and what is it all about. But also the importance of a company with a firm, non-profit, profit-driven organisations, but being market-oriented, so having this laser-like focus on the customer. Then talking a bit about this idea of the strategic marketing management planning process and why that's a really important part of a business, because this marketing is about the customer-facing part of the organisation, having a laser-like focus on the customer, but how do we operationalise these plans to better create value and deliver value to customers, to thereby create loyal customers that leads to a sustainable competitive advantage. So very important process for businesses, but as part of that framework, I'm going to talk about two key elements that Nick wanted me to sort of emphasise. And that's understanding the external environment. So this is where we're looking at some of the future developments in the marketplace and how it relates back to marketing and the customer experience, and the importance of a value proposition in terms of what is that specifically, and why is that important, and what are some nice examples about that. Then I'll finish up on, if we've got time, just some insights, things that I think could be relevant for you to take away that could help for your major assignment component there. So in terms of introductions, so background-wise, just qualifications, Bachelor of Business, PhD in Marketing, but I'm a university graduate. And this is sort of coming back to this major assignment. So like many of our graduates, I left after the studies and looking for opportunities elsewhere, went to Melbourne. It was around the .com time and moved down to Melbourne for those opportunities. Working inside IBM for a number of years, moving back to Sydney because I wanted warmer weather. But I also had caught the research bug, which is why many of us come back to academia, where I wanted to focus more on research and solving problems that I was interested in, which is in the customer experience area, particularly the role of technology. But got the dream job. So luckily, fortunately, it's a nice big university, we're world-renowned internationally, and there was an opportunity here to come back. So for me, this is a dream job. I think I'm very passionate about the city, fighting for it very vigorously. But to have now this world-class facility, new space, and then here we are today looking out at a harbour, having an experience like this. I've been here for 10 years, and I remember, like James, working in University House next door and seeing the old buildings here being demolished and all of that type of activity going on, to then seeing new space grow. And like James, we're teaching each week, we're looking out the window, and as we're teaching our courses, or waiting to teach our courses, we could see new space growing level by level. So to see it grow and then to see the light rail and we're making progress, eventually we'll get there. And then again, to have this type of experience, this is fantastic facility. And it's very important that the university's here because again, opportunities like this, industry engagement, this is what it's all about. And this is an example of knowledge transfer. So this is how we can give back to our community and hopefully take some insights away from the presentation tonight, for instance. So I'm a Newcastle person. But industry experience, went down as a graduate within IBM, moving in different parts of the business in marketing management roles and also business consulting. Nick gave a nice introduction on terms of research experience there, but focused on services marketing, consumer behaviour. But in terms of just following me, so I'm active now on Twitter. That's the most place where I'm very active. So if you're on Twitter, follow me on some of the details here. And I'll make this PowerPoint presentation available to you all. So you'll have all the links and all of the slides that I'm presenting tonight. So I'll make that available to Nick if you can distribute that to everybody. But I'm also on LinkedIn, so if you want to stay up to date with what we're doing, just like Twitter, so I tweet about new research that we do in the discipline, not only myself but my colleagues, just any other market research reports I think may be interesting to marketing professionals and industry folks in generally. So it's a great way to sort of see what we're up to with life here in the discipline and the business school more broadly. LinkedIn, just look for me on Jamie Castle LinkedIn and you'll see I'm on there as well. But just a bit of background about you guys. But is there anybody here that's actually working in the marketing function at the moment? Just to raise their hands. Just one. Two, kind of. Okay, that's fine. And what about human resource management? Okay, is there like an engineering or some sort of area of work related to that? So it's a few more. Sales, a few in sales. What other functions are we working in, the ways that didn't raise their hands?
Quality assurance.
Quality assurance. Counting. Yep, counting and finance areas.
IT and support.
IT. Just only one person in IT? Anyone else that we haven't? Law. Okay, so a little bit of a cross section there, and only one person, two people in marketing. Okay. So coming back to, I guess, starting off with, what is this, the concept of marketing? Now, if I said, what is marketing to you, what would you tell me? What is it about?
Selling a product or idea.
Selling a product idea.
Understanding your customer.
Understanding customers. What are some of the associations that pop into mind? Sorry?
Brochures.
When we do this, the typical word is advertising. Marketing's all about advertising. You guys and girls go for long lunches, spend lots of money on ads and things of that nature. Well, marketing's far more than brochures, ads and things of that nature. It's very much focused on the customer. There is sales as a component of that, but there's a whole wide range of different activities. Everything from communication, so advertising is a big part of that. It's very important because that's what people see and that's how attitudes are formed and how people can be persuaded with your message. But there's also other activities, market intelligence, market research. There's assisting in product development, giving insights from the marketplace, sharing it with research and development, so they're getting those customer insights where we can use it for innovation. There's all kinds of different activities that are involved in the marketing function. So if I had to define what is marketing, I can share with you the definition on screen, which you guys have only got these little monitors. I have to report this back to the Pro Vice Chancellor if we can get a big screen here so you can see some of these, the text on screen. But this is a definition taken from the American Marketing Association. The reason why what do we look to the Americans for? Well, it's the largest association in the world, but when they craft these definitions, they're working with industry. So they're working with the Coca-Colas, the McDonald's, the Facebooks, the Googles. When they shape these definitions, this is what ends up in textbooks sold, in marketing textbooks sold around the world. They are reflective of state-of-the-art thinking when it comes to marketing. So this is where in academia we refer to this body. But if I looked at the definition, I'll read it out. But marketing is the activity, set of institutions and processes, now underlying key terms for us, creating, communicating, delivering and exchanging offerings that have value for customers, clients, partners and society at large. And I'll talk about a little bit later, but this importance about society. So marketing, yep, sure, we're responsible for generating revenue and profit, but we do that in profit and non-profit organisations. So marketing is as a philosophy, it's a strategy, it's a way of thinking in terms of business, but it's applicable to both your Coca-Colas of the world, but even charities, service government agencies, on how they are trying to send public service announcements, getting people to slow down and stop drink driving and things of that nature. So these are all marketing skills that are relevant to those entities as well. But the key term here, apart from creating, communicating, delivering and exchanging, is the word value. So what is the term value? And the way we see the term value is, well, what is it of benefit to you? When I think about all the benefits that I receive from an organisation versus all the costs that I give up, not just money, but time and effort that it takes to procure your product or service, I do a calculation. There's sort of like a trade-off. The more benefits I get versus the costs, well, there's net value there. So obviously what we're trying to do is offer superior value to our customer. So with this definition, there is a focus now on value creation. If you looked at and studied the definitions over time, there was a big focus on satisfaction. It's about satisfying the needs of consumers. That's important, that's true. But now we're extending that now to this notion of value, about this delivering, facilitating value for customers. But importantly, value, it's a subjective assessment of benefits relative to costs in determining the worth of a product. And I'm using the term product very broadly. So a product could mean a physical product, but a service as well. But customer value equals, so it's this equation idea, this trade-off, customer benefits minus the customer costs. But benefits can refer to multiple forms of utility. So when I say benefits, it's not only, say, the product quality or the service quality. It can also be benefits around emotions, convenience, socialisation, how a product or service enables socialisation to occur amongst of consumers, for instance. So there's multiple forms of benefits that we can think about. Now, this particular chart I'm going to talk about is a bit of a history. We'll go on a time machine. We'll just talk through about, well, how did this idea of marketing come into existence, and the notion of the marketing concept, about how firms needs to be more focused on the customer. Well, if we go back to the Industrial Revolution, we got good at having factories, building things, many workers and new technologies at the time, being able to manufacture things and having them available for the masses, all those type of things. Then in the 1920s, we started to see new innovations come along, and firms started to adopt a production concept. So focusing on, can we produce this particular product that may satisfy this need that's out in the marketplace? And can we produce enough of it so that we can keep the cost down and have, like a car, for instance, the Model T Ford is a nice example of this, where we can make it very affordable so many people can buy it. But the production focus, the production concept there focused more on, it's about the product. I've got a product, I can manufacture this, and then we can see if we can sell it out into the marketplace. We think there's a latent need out there. And the famous example talking about Henry Ford at the time is you can have any colour you want as long as it's black. That was the only model that they carried. It was the only colour that you could have. This is what the firm can do. It can do this very efficiently, and then they're going to put that out there into the marketplace. If we go a little bit forward in time, we had the Great Depression, and then we had a little bit of more focus by organisations when there was a little bit of a recovery there, starting to practice more the selling concept. So we have a product, now we have to aggressively sell that product, and it's up to our sales teams to persuasively convince consumers to buy our product. And a Coca-Cola was a great example of that. A lot of advertising everywhere, really trying to drive the fact that you can, you should be having a sense of wholesome refreshment that'll satisfy your thirst. It's a nice beverage, and there was just blanket advertising everywhere, trying to really aggressively sell to the consumer. We then move a little bit further on, and then we had World War II came upon us. With World War II, the world got very good at, again, not only manufacturing things, tanks, planes, and all these type of equipment that were needed at the time, and then we also got good at distribution. How can we move all of this product and all of the supplies to the front lines very efficiently. So this is all setting the scene for how firms could then grow internationally, distribute products and services, or products in particular, to different parts of the country serving customers, and being able to do that extremely efficiently. With the 1950s, again, we had a very prosperous time. We then started to see the birth of the marketing concept, where firms started to shift their behaviour a little bit, really starting to think about, well, what the customers want. If we can learn more about what customers want, then we can develop better, high quality products and services to better suit those needs. How can we keep our customers satisfied? And this is where we started to see marketing departments emerge. So formalised marketing departments with specialised roles in the act of marketing and the different activities there. So you'll have people now starting to be employed in marketing research roles. You'll have people in advertising and selling and all those type of things. But we started to broaden out that function. And in the 1950s, late 1950s, we started to see this marketing mix framework emerge out of business schools. Has anybody heard of the marketing mix, and what is it? Anyone but not Nick? You had your hand up? What's the marketing mix? It's the 4 Ps. I'll say the 4 Ps. Sorry? 7 Ps. So the 4 Ps, which came out of the 50s, product, price, place, promotion. So these are the controllable elements that a marketing manager has that they can manipulate in the marketing program. So in terms of the product. Now, marketers don't create the product. Of course, production, research and development, they do that. But we can influence that through thinking about what are the attributes and benefits that customers want to see in those products. So as much as Motorola, we can have a television, but how does a television look? Motorola at the time thought about, well, this is a piece of furniture that's a centerpiece of the family home. So obviously the type of wood is important. Its size, all of these type of things are things that people think about. And in terms of price, marketers have a way to influence price, because price is important. It's what creates the revenue. People will look at price and decide in many times whether they'll choose to purchase that particular product. But price can set a signal, sends a signal. It could be a signal of quality or value for money, or it's budget, it's cheap. So we need to think about how we manipulate price to gain those sales. Then there's promotion, so that's things that we see, communications, advertisements and things of that nature. But place, what does place refer to, do you think, in this framework? So it's what we refer to as distribution. So the place in which the product is purchased and sold. So a channel. So it could be a retail store like your JB Hi-Fi. It could be a website, all those type of things. And someone talk about 7 Ps, that's correct. If you study services marketing, this came further along in the 1990s, where the study of services really gained some steam. They added 3 more Ps. Do you know what they are?
I remember people. I don't
People,
remember the
so managing people. So in services, when you have frontline staff, you have to manage people. Processes, so services run on processes in terms of the people that follow certain processes to execute tasks with customers, but also digital processes. So when you think about websites, apps, all these type of new channels, for instance, they all run on digital processes that have to be managed, because that's important from a marketing perspective, because it delivers the customer experience. Again, this is what people see. And then physical evidence. So in a service, the physical evidence is very important because that sends a quality signal. So if the university is a service provider, what's an example of a physical evidence, do you think? Because you're experiencing a service experience right now. This building. And this is what students see, potential students see, if they're going to come and study here if they're coming from China. So the role of physical evidence is incredibly important for services, because it's a quality signal, a cue for quality. But if we look at this from the 1950s, and then from 50s, really after that particular period of time, information technology advancements. So we're able to have more computing, processing information data, enabling us to understand customers more specifically. We then moved, I've gone too far, into the 1980s. We had the growth of the marketing concept really came into play. So focusing on customer needs before developing the product, but aligning all functions of the company to again have this focus on the customer. And we started to move more into sophisticated use of marketing research, really understanding about what do customers want to see in their products. And we see Converse shoes, you know, all these different colours emerging because this is what people want. Coke shifted and innovated a little bit by introducing Diet Coke at the time, not just the one flavour, so to speak. So there's all these other types of things that were happening where we had formalised marketing departments happening in organisations of all sizes, and focusing on these one-to-many interactions with customers, learning from customers, and using the marketing mix, our marketing planning framework, as a way to develop our marketing plans. Moving along, so then we had the focus on relationship marketing. It's a whole new set of strategies and things that entered the marketing literature and way practitioners were thinking about engaging with customers. We're into today's time, and 1990s, 2000s, we then had, this has been cut off here, I might go back a bit, societal marketing concept. So the marketing concept evolved where there was a greater focus on, well, we want to make our profits, but we've got to do it that also benefits society. And great ways of thinking about that is, you know, many of you shop and you may have come into contact with a body shop where there's a great set of, you know, the values that they strongly promote to the marketplace, that they don't have products that have hurt animals or tested on animals. Things are environmentally friendly and a lot of things of that nature. Another great example of an organisation that practices the societal marketing concept is Nespresso. So a lot of you may have Nespresso products, you have the coffee machine, but they have a lot of great practices in how they grow their coffee beans, you know, fair trade policies with how they pay their farmers and how the coffees are grown sustainably, but also how they have their recycling program with their coffee pods. So you can recycle free of charge, I believe. I don't know if there's any Nespresso customers here, but you can use an app, get a package delivered, you put all your pods into the package, send it away, and Nespresso will recycle the aluminium, which ends up in cars and other types of ways they use that steel. So this is where our current thinking is and how we're trying to encourage firms to move more in this type of direction. So many firms, maybe some of you could argue your organisation's practicing the societal marketing concept and have a lot of corporate social responsibilities programs that you have, but this is very much a strong and firmly embedded part of the way your organisation thinks about doing its business. Moving further in time, we had a lot more thinking emerging around service dominant logic, that all products, even product manufacturers, but all organisations are services. You deliver an experience to a customer, whether it's a physical product or whether you're in a service organisation, but everything is an experience. So when you use a product, you're having an experience. But what that type of thinking really does argue more is that customers are very active participants. They want to co-create with an organisation. They want to give more insights to you so that you can then better offer a more customised offering. And when I looked at some of your value propositions for some of the companies you work for, that's actually stated where you work with customers or you partner with customers very closely. And then in more recent times, we have this new wave of thinking, this Marketing 3.0 by Philip Kotler. If you do a marketing principles course, and the textbook that you'll have will more than likely be written by Philip Kotler. He's one of the big gurus in our area. He's written about marketing for a long period of time. So when Philip Kotler he releases a new book, it's like the God has spoken and these are the new commandments. So with his new book that was released in 2010, but setting, again, sort of thinking about the way in which the world's moving with a lot of new technologies now, this collaborative consumption that's taking place, and how customers not only want to collaborate with organisations, but they want to collaborate with other customers as well. And this is where the advancements of social media really facilitate that type of experience for people. So moving along, post 2010, I just wanted us to think about this, and this is the world you're living in now. But if we think about the role of technology and how it's transforming the way in which we're living our lives and how it affects consumption. This is an image of back in 2005. We're in Rome and everybody's waiting for the Pope. And as everybody's waiting for the Pope, you may find that down in the, my little clicker's not working, but someone's got a mobile phone capturing the moment. Down here, it may be the first time that we had a colour, maybe a colour phone, taking some photos, trying to capture the experience. But if we fast forward to 2013, we see now everyone's got devices. Not only have they got smartphones, but we've now got iPads. We're now connected to the internet, so now what I can do is live stream if I want to my friends and family on the other side of the world. I'm here watching the Pope. And I can also share other different types of content, texts, images, video, live stream. But everybody's got these devices and different types of devices, not just little phones, but big phones. And the interface, the experience that gives people. So we're all interconnected and all these type of things. So if this is symbolic of how technology has been adopted and all these type of things, but thinking about this in a consumption setting. So we're doing this type of stuff when we go to a restaurant. So as people having their meals, they may be taking photos of the meal that they're having, sharing that with your social network, and then passing judgment. Am I having a very good experience, or is this restaurant experience I'm having very poor? The wait staff are very rude. The food's not that great tonight. Must be the second chef or something on tonight. So the ability to pass judgments, word of mouth recommendations, instantly to a large group of friends, your social networks. This is the world that we're living in. So this has a lot of implications for managing the customer experience. Because what customers can do now is not only create value, which is share positive word of mouth, that's great. Marketers love that stuff because we're not paying for that. But also they can destroy value, so the negative word of mouth. So people will start to avoid your restaurant, your cafe, or whatever it is, the service experience that you deliver, for instance. So marketing's undergoing a paradigm shift at the moment. And the way we see marketing done in the past was more about the bowling ball analogy. So thinking was from this particular journal article that we would give you if you're studying marketing, one of our marketing courses. But we can think about marketing like the bowling alley, where the person bowling the ball is the firm or the marketing manager. The ball that they have is the message. And the alley, that's the channel. So it could be television, it could be radio, whatever the main sort of stream channel was at the time. The pins represent segments, market segments. And what I'm trying to do with my message is hit as many segments down to create a sale. Now that's great. So back in the 80s and 90s, this is fantastic. I know what the channels are. They're TV, radio, print. I think about my message. I try to pick the publications or the TV channels I know people are consuming. And with my message, hopefully I've crafted a nice message, try to hit as many segments as possible. But now things have changed dramatically. Thinking about technology, thinking about internet. It's more now seen as a pinball machine. So I still have my message, but I put the ball in, and when I let go of the little hammer, what happens? The ball goes out into the game and it's being knocked around, bounced around, all these type of things. Trying to hit as many of these little points inside the game to get as many points as I can. But what I've got to do as the marketer is keep the message in play with these the little paddles there, so I can keep staying in the game, getting a high score. But it's chaos is going on, isn't it? When you think about the analogy, this is nice. I like to be in this mode where I know that this is the channel, and I know that all I've got to do is book a 30-second commercial, and I've just got to create a message that's talking with this type of person. But today, through fragmentation of media, not just television, but you're onto Netflix and online streaming, you've got websites, apps, all these different types of channels delivering media to us all. Well, where's the customer? What does the customer look like now? So it's chaos. And again, attributed to a lot of the social networking platforms that we now see today. Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Google+, whatever the next one is. There's going to be a whole more as we move along in time. So customers, this is an example. This is what happens in the old world. Some people didn't get service. They waited at somewhere for 30 minutes and no one gave them service in this particular little diner. So they got very upset. They've got this tomato sauce. We waited 30 minutes, no service, got frustrated, then left. But in the new world, more likely what will happen is people will then share this displeasure that they have with many, many people in their social network. So if I had to ask a lot of you, you're probably on Facebook, and how many followers do you have in your social network? The average now is about 194. So the average number of followers on Facebook, I think, is around 194 followers. Now, some of you will probably get a lot more than that. Okay, so that's very damaging for an organisation when you're passing on very negative words of mouth. But if it's a positive message, well, that's great. You know, we love that sort of stuff because it means that we're not, you know, as marketers, we're not paying. I'm not using my precious resources from my company for marketing and acquiring new customers. So the importance of being market oriented. So it's a company philosophy when we talk about this idea of market orientation. It's focused on discovering and meeting the needs and desire of its customers through its product mix. But according to some marketing researchers, this is how we can further describe how market orientation is implemented in your firm. So it's organisation-wide generation of marketing intelligence pertaining to the current and future customer needs. So this is very, very important to be externally focused. So getting those insights from the marketplace, what are the trends coming down the line that's going to impact your customers and the markets that you serve. But then what we need to do is disseminate this information. So it's not like marketing or whoever gets that information, you know, has to hoard that information. We've got to share that. Share that with all different parts, particularly research and development would want to know these type of insights, but we've got to share that. And then the organisation needs to think about how it's going to respond to this data, this information that we've got. So if we can do all of these things, well then you're on your path to becoming market oriented. Now a way in which we implement this philosophy of being market oriented is through the marketing planning process. It's like a nice organising framework that we can use. So we develop the marketing plan, and once it's developed, we implement it, and then we execute on that. And what I wanted to do here is go through major stages and with some emphasis on areas that Nick has asked me to focus on. But when we do a marketing plan, and there's the little structure here on screen, you know, first there's an executive summary, and a lot of your executives, they're not going to read a very lengthy document, so they want that nice short overview. But the second stage is this situation analysis. So it provides an examination of factors, trends that affect your marketing mix, your marketing strategy development. Now that comes on a little bit further down. Once we've done our situation analysis, we then look into, well, what are our objectives, our marketing objectives? We're obviously, you know, you want to document the revenue that you would like to grow, but by how much? So you want to quantify that. But sometimes your objective could be just raise awareness with certain segments that you were targeting. You know, we can have a range of different types of objectives. We then start to think about marketing strategies, thinking about what are our segments, which are the ones that we're going to target, and then thinking about our marketing mix, the four Ps, because they're the ones that we can manipulate. We can control those in our marketing program. Once we've decided on that, we then focus on implementing it, thinking about how we evaluate our progress and what are the control mechanisms that we can use there as well. But what I'm going to do is just focus on situation analysis and just share with you, I guess, some of the insights from a marketing perspective and more broadly, the future of consumption and what we see from marketing. So first of all, Nick sort of said, look, let's focus on SWOT analysis is a big component of understanding a situation analysis for us. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. So that's what I mean by SWOT. Strengths, looking at the internal capabilities that may help a company reach its objectives. So you're looking internally. Same is with your weaknesses. So it's very much an internal analysis of your organisations. But where the O and the T come in, so opportunity, external factors that the company may be able to exploit to its advantage, and threats, current and emerging external factors that may challenge your company's performance. So I'm going to talk about the O and the T a little bit with some content coming up. But some examples, an opportunity. So if we look at the O. So for us, if I had to use the university as an example, so a developing market such as the online environment for education, that's a great opportunity. The online internet is opening up a lot of opportunities to enter into new markets. That's great. Joint ventures or strategic alliances with industry groups. So this is where I think this is a very important exercise that I'm doing in James, where we're trying to work with HunterNet and other industry groups like you guys This is important for the university, it's important for our region that we do this. This is a way we can get a competitive edge over all the other things that Macquarie University and many other universities in Sydney are doing, because that's what they're doing as well. Moving into new market segments that offer improved profits. So new educational programs such as an increasing demand in entrepreneurship and innovation. That's an area where there's some growth and demand for those type of programs. There's a new international market. We see the emerging middle class in Asia Pacific regions, China, India. So maybe we could target those areas for more students, for instance. But maybe coming back to your organisations, looking to those regions for opportunity. Are there more customers in those areas that you should be looking at? But in terms of threats, a new competitor in your home market. Could be new online providers. Sydney University's being far more aggressive in this area. I believe there's a Japanese university's bought the old courtrooms up at the top of town there. So don't know what's happening there, but there could be more universities in the city, I'm not sure. Increased competitor actions. Competitor has a new innovative product or service. Competitors have superior access to channels of distribution. The list can go on, but there are more threats looking external to the firm. But focusing on the O and the T, opportunities and threats, but these are some things that we see more broadly as it relates to the marketplace and the consumption aspects. But there's no doubt there's a growing proliferation of channels and touch points to engage customers. So what I mean by that is when you think about how the number of channels has evolved over the last 10 years, we've had the retail store, call centres, websites, and then when we get into social media applications. But then you think about the number of social media applications, the list keeps going on. We're now moving into a point where you've got self-serve technologies in stores, so Woolworths, you can serve yourself as you check yourself out. You can even now order pizza through an Xbox or a PlayStation 4. So all of these different touch points now are expanding and growing. That represents tremendous challenges for an organisation because from a marketing perspective, we're brand custodians. We are responsible for the customer experience and how the brand is communicated to customers. So when something breaks down, a website can't be accessed or it's clunky, that's our problem. We have to intervene into that and fix that. But the challenge there will be this seamless integration of channels. We have to ensure a consistent brand experience, no matter what touch point you're selecting as a customer. We're going to see the growing development of Internet of Things, so objects connecting the firm with customers through artificial intelligence and cloud computing, and some of you may have some experience with that. With Jetstar insurance companies and a little bot opens up and they want to talk to us, but no humans actually doing that. That's all automated, it's artificial intelligence happening there. But also how objects, appliances are being connected together. And I'm going to talk about some examples of that in a moment. But with all of these different channels, all these different touch points collecting data on us, we're going to see, and we are already seeing, this data explosion. And some of you may be involved in these discussions already, but you've got so much data coming in. What do we do with this? This unstructured data. How can we make sense of that so we can better serve our customers, deliver more personalised experiences? And some of you have a lot of challenges with that. And then we think about these new frontier technologies emerging, such as augmented reality and virtual reality. And these are important because, for many of us, we're carrying a smartphone. But 10, 15 years ago, not everybody had a smartphone or had a mobile phone. But we survive on these. We can't leave home without our smartphones. They're just so much part of our lifestyles. And soon we may see augmented realities and virtual realities come into the same kind of role. And they're very fundamental to the way in which we interact with brands and how these new technologies can deliver very emotional-based customer experiences. And I'll talk about some examples for that because they act as decision support aids. I can be more comfortable and confident in the purchase decision I'm making because maybe I've had a virtual reality experience. And then obviously there's going to be very specific industry-centric external forces that are very relevant to the industry sectors that you're in. So these are sort of the more broad-based things to start thinking about. But let's come back to a lot of the points that I spoke about. The first one I was talking about is the explosion of channels. And when we have multiple channels, we refer to this phenomenon as being more omni-channel focused. So no matter what channel or touch point the customer wants to be in, a lot of organisations are going to have all these channels touching the customer, but they have to be integrated. They have to offer this seamless customer experience so that the experience that I have in the call centre is very similar and congruent with how I see the online store experience that I have, or if I go and speak with the person in store, the experience is seamless. But this is very interesting with regards to the future of the Internet of Things, artificial intelligence and things of this nature, because we're growing so much now where infrastructure with cloud computing, big data, mobile devices, all this connectivity and broadband speeds increasing. So all this data can now be shared and captured by the organisation. And how we're starting to see a lot of these other types of technologies with artificial intelligence, cognitive systems, robotics, even this idea of machine vision. So now I've got a picture on the screen of some Samsung devices. And these are smart devices that are now experimenting, and they know what's sitting in your fridge. So when you need more milk or whatever the ingredients that you've got sitting in the fridge, it'll do the ordering for you. And what's interesting with Samsung is they're already working in the artificial intelligence space. There's a lot of smarts and software sophistication going on in the background. But what happens when all the other devices are smart enabled, all talking with each other, knowing your food consumption habits? We've already got technologies like the little one on the far left screen here with the Alexa, Amazon device, voice assistant. So Alexa's listening to you. You can order a pizza, you can order food, you're shopping through Alexa. Alexa could be connected with your fridge and all the other appliances. And with machine vision, which means there's a camera inside these products, so it's watching what you're doing. It knows your habits. It's collecting all this data. So this is opening up all kinds of possibilities for all these industries that sit on the top and how they better serve customers. How can we better deliver services and products that enrich the customer experience for you? So these are all things coming down the line. But also this issue around data explosion and the amount of data generated. This is just an example of Facebook's one of their data centers here in Sweden. And it was built about 5 or 6 years ago, but it's one of 11 huge data centers that hold all these servers, which is some of the pictures on screen here that you may not be able to see, but storing all of the data that Facebook is generating. But remember, there's 11 of these huge data centers around the world. And does anybody know why they're located in Sweden?
Cold.
It's cold. And there's big fans here. And what it does, it sucks the air out from around the facility to cool all the servers. And again, they've just completed expansion of this image down below of a data center in New Mexico. They spent $1 billion to triple its size, and these are all solar panels, so that it's environmentally friendly, renewable energies that run the facility. Google has the same thing. So if you Google image data center storage or data warehousing, you'll see their big facilities all around the world, because we've got to house all this data. So much data is being generated. So when we come back to now the issue of augmented realities. So here's an example of IKEA. We're now making a potential purchase decision. But at home, I can use this app. Maybe I'm interested in buying this green lounge. How would that look in my lounge room? Well, now we can start to see. I now may have higher confidence to make a purchase decision. I'm now going to purchase that lounge. Now that consumer may then talk to Alexa and organise for the lounge to be purchased at IKEA's online store, which then is delivered to the customer in 3 days or whatever it takes to get there. So these type of tools now supporting customers in making their decisions. Just the importance of now virtual realities. Very experimental at this stage, but things are ramping up. This image here is Mark Zuckerberg at a developer conference in 2016. And just look who they're working with. It's at a Samsung Galaxy event. So all of the developers that came to this conference are wearing virtual reality headsets, because he's trying to showcase the software smarts that Facebook are working on. And Facebook also made some acquisitions of some virtual reality hardware manufacturers because they're now moving in this space. But what's interesting here is when Facebook's on board with the technology, we're probably not too far away from this being adopted in the marketplace and how it becomes a feature of our lives. We now start to see virtual reality appearing in popular culture. The Ready Player One film, Steven Spielberg's on the bandwagon. So when Steven Spielberg's making a film about virtual reality, well, this is now starting to enter the popular culture conscience of certain societies around the world. What's also interesting is we now see these virtual reality headsets. You can buy these for $500 now with PlayStation. And as I was saying before, touch points and examples like Xbox and PlayStation and how you can now order pizza and watch Foxtel and things of this nature. But what happens when we can connect it to virtual reality headsets? And what happens if you want to watch the sport on free-to-air TV? So instead of watching it on your 2D monitor, you can put on a virtual reality headset and be actually courtside or a side of the football field in watching and consuming the game. So this could potentially revolutionise customer experiences in so many different industries. And this is even hitting Newcastle right now. This is a photo. You're not going to be able to see this too clearly because the screens are here so small, but this is down at Honeysuckle, and you can see some of the buildings in the background just down here. But this was the Porsche marketing event that they had, I think it was over the summer, where they had a whole bunch of Porsches lined up in front of the museum. A trailer was pulled up where consumers or people could go inside, put on a virtual reality headset, sit down, which is what this person's doing here, and have an experience of what it's like to drive a Porsche. And even here at the university, we use virtual reality now. We're starting to use virtual reality in the last 12 months or so in how we're training nurses. So instead of buying all this very expensive equipment that's needed to train nursing staff in what happens when there's an emergency with a newborn baby and all these physical facilities that's needed to train staff, very expensive to do, we can do that using virtual reality technology, which reduces the cost enormously. The amount of cost that's associated with the physical facilities, I just couldn't believe it when they were telling me all this sort of stuff, because it's not only the physical infrastructure, there's insurances that need to be paid, and every time there's a certain machine that runs, an expert needs to come out from the organisation just to be there, just in case something goes wrong. And you need an expert, an engineer to fix something. But through virtual reality technologies, the students can go through the procedure to train themselves over and over, as long as many times as they want, because they have to follow a fixed process. So what I've got now is a video, and we can see what we're doing in this space. So what are some of the outcomes then of some of these big developments? What's the implications for marketing and marketing strategy? So we as marketers, we do tend to see ourselves as engineers. We engineer a customer experience, and we do that with all those different channels now that we're starting to look at. Not only just the physical store, you've all may have been to an Apple store, but everything that you see in that store, its atmosphere, the design of the furniture, the colours on the wall, the posters, all of those things have been purposefully designed to create an experience for people. But that matches also when you go to the website. The website's easy to use, it looks great, it's got a very much design-led architecture in the way it's presented. And then when you look at their products, same thing again, looks all very well designed, it's high quality in appearance and easy to use. But the big issue for us is how do we manage that experience when we've got physical and digital processes at play. Establishment of a data analytics capability. All this data is coming in, so we then need to work out, well then how do we process all this data? How can we then generate insights that can then prescribe strategy? How can we then get a better understanding of our customers and the different segments of customers? Because ultimately what we want to try and do is understand what their benefits that they're seeking, what are their expectations, what needs they have, their behavioural patterns, how often, how frequently are they using our products and services. And if we know this, we can then offer more personalised solutions to them. But naturally, you've heard this in the media and the news, but data security, trust is now becoming the name of the game. So value, very important, satisfaction, very important. But now trust, brand trusts. Because brands now have lots of data on us, we've got some big trust issues with that, particularly when we keep hearing about these breaches that are happening. The big issue at the moment is Facebook. This is an apology or a notice that Facebook put in about how they're going to, basically change their ways with how they protect our information. We have a responsibility to protect our information. If we can't, we don't deserve it. Signed by Mark Zuckerberg, put in major newspapers all around the world. Because Facebook consumers now have a lot of concerns about who's keeping our data safe. But Facebook's one of many other organisations, Sony, all types of big, large organisations where if these companies can't keep our data safe, well, how are small and medium-sized enterprises going to keep our data safe? So us as consumers are now starting to grow very wary of organisations when they're collecting our data. So firms now are competing on differentiated brand experiences. We're competing on brand. How strong is your brand? How are you able to deliver consistent customer experiences across all the different channels that you have? So let's come back to this marketing planning process. We then looked at situation analysis, some of the big external forces coming down the line, developments, innovations coming down the line. But let's now look at marketing strategies and the importance now of value. How do we deliver value to our customers? We said that at the beginning of the definition of marketing. Value was an important component of that, but how do we actually do that? I'm not going to talk through this slide because you guys can't see that very clearly. I was hoping we'd have a big screen, but this isn't really coming out too clearly. But what I will focus on is the importance of value proposition. Now, part of your major assignment, I think this idea of value proposition is going to become very important to you. But what is this term of a value proposition that sort of guides how we develop our marketing program, these 4 Ps that we're talking about? So what we need to do is develop a clear, concise and compelling articulation of how the needs are important to the customer are satisfied. They dictate how firms will differentiate and position their brands in the marketplace. It's a subjective assessment. We make that perception based on benefits relative to costs in determining the worth of a product. It's that trade-off aspect again, so thinking about benefits minus the costs is their net value. And benefits can refer to multiple forms of utility. Now, when we get to a value proposition, where's our AMP control people? Pop quiz, what's your value proposition? Can you articulate it? No. It's okay, I didn't expect you to because I've got it here, I'll help. Now, you're probably not going to see, again, it's very, very small. But this is on AMP Control's website. And I didn't know what AMP Control does before tonight, but I can read out certain elements here, but I'll highlight the areas that I thought are very, very good. So AMP Control delivers integrated electrical, electronic and control solutions to improve safety and efficiency in mining, renewable infrastructure and industrial applications. Down on the next paragraph, efficiency, you got that. What sets us apart is our ability to engineer unique solutions that deliver on both performance and reliability. So see the benefits. Improve safety, efficiency, performance and reliability. And I also like the integrated angle as well because they can integrate electrical, electronic and control solutions. Maybe other competitors can't do that, but AMP Control can. What's more, is what I really like is qualification statements. So to achieve this, we work in partnership with our customers. So this is that idea about co-creation, working with customers to better provide more personalised solutions to them. Really important part. Further goes on in terms of the qualification statement about how they can deliver these benefits to customers, drawing on the multidisciplinary technical resources. So in other words, we've got people in our organisation coming from diverse skill sets that we can draw upon to design those solutions to better deliver on those benefits of safety, efficiency, performance and reliability. So this is a nice value proposition here. And then we've got, and seek new ways to improve the various solutions. So they're always looking for new ways to deliver solutions. So again, referred to, this is a nice one, so good job, AMP Control. This is nice. And you'll have a copy of the presentation so you can refer back to this as well. And I got that off your website. Now looking at a different one, Dollar Shave Club. Has anybody heard of the Dollar Shave Club brand? This is a nice, well-known example. I like talking about this because these guys become very successful with just a very low commodity product. This is razor blades, and very cheap ones as a matter of fact. But what I'd like to show is, like, first of all, they've got a very sort of short, succinct value proposition. Look, feel, and shave like $1 million without paying for it. So that's a very shortened version of a value proposition. But what I'd like to show is just an example of their original communication when they launched the brand and try to gain attention about their offering. But then I've got a short interview that goes for about 5 minutes where we'll talk to the CEO, Michael Jubin, he'll talk about the value proposition and what he's proposing to the customer that's very unique. And it's sort of an interview style with that this short video that will come up after this particular advertisement, just so we can learn a little bit more about what the Dollar Shave Club's all about.
Hi, I'm Mike, founder of DollarShaveClub.com. What is DollarShaveClub.com? Well, for $1 a month, we send high-quality razors right to your door.
Yep. So the idea being they're a mail order company where you first reach the consumers through a nice cheap razor blade, but then opening the opportunities up to getting into other types of grooming products, but to developing that relationship with the customer. So he's talking about content. They develop a magazine, and that's a way to then develop more of that relationship with their customers that can then move into other types of products. But from when you see an advertisement like the one I showed you, through all the different touch points that they had when they received the product, the boxing, the unboxing, using the magazine and using the products and all those type of things, it's reflecting a brand experience that that person's having. Then a recent development's happened with Dollar Shave Club. Again, thinking about look, feel, and shave like $1 million without paying for it. They recently got acquired by Unilever, where he sold the business for $1 billion. You know, this is a cheap razor blade, and this is where it started. You know, mail order organisation starting on cheap razor blades. He's still the CEO. He's still with Dollar Shave Club, but I'm sure he's got a yacht and an island and a nice car and all these other things as well. So very successful person in building up a brand, particularly from a commodity product, but developing the brand experience and thinking about what's the problem he's solving and what was his value proposition. So how was he offering benefits to the consumers he was targeting. Another one is Domino's. So we're sort of staying in this low complex product categories here with pizza, but they've got an interesting story. Domino's Australia has become quite successful. They're the largest pizza chain in Australia, but they also have the rights for the franchise in New Zealand, Belgium, France, Netherlands, Japan and Germany. I think they account for 30-something% of the revenue for the Domino's international brand. Obviously the rest of the revenue made in the US. But their share price has outperformed Facebook, Apple, Google and Amazon over the past 10 years. That's amazing. And if you look at the recent reports in the media, the CEO is the highest paid CEO in the country of $36 million a year. He's paid more than Peter and Stephen Lowy from Westfield, Nicholas Moore from Macquarie Bank, and the list goes on. So they're doing something right. If we had a look at their value proposition, mealtime solution for the digital age that is feel good, and I've just put the words in here in brackets, tasty, value for money, fun, in terms of how you could describe that a little bit further. That is fast, simple and easy. So they're not a gourmet pizza restaurant. You know, this is a fast food, but their products are moderately of quality and value for money. But if we move beyond that, it's also the delivery of fast, simple and easy ways in which you can get your pizza delivered to you. And this is where the innovation and the technology starts to come into play. So a lot of you may have had experience with ordering through a smartphone. Yep, that's great. Many other pizza places do that too. But we've also got SMS ordering that you can do now, and I think you can now order pizza through Twitter by sending information to Twitter very briefly, because it already knows. Once you build up a bit of a database with them, they'll know what your favourite pizza is, and you can order through Twitter. We've got drones that have been now released in New Zealand, where it's delivering pizzas to people in certain towns, where it can have access. What else have we got? We've got smartphones, so you can order your pizza through a smartphone. We've got these devices used in hamburgers. There's a little robot on wheels, and they put the pizza at the top, close the lid, and then it delivers it to wherever it needs to go in an urban area, like Hamburg's a bigger city. We've also got Alexa. So Alexa, Amazon voice assistant, so you just tell Alexa that you'd like to place your favourite order to Domino's, and then it executes the task. So again, we've got all these different ways, and there's many more other, yep?
Wasn't Drew and the drones just used for brand awareness?
Yeah, so that's a nice way to cut through the clutter. I don't think Pizza Hut and other people are doing that. But if you go onto the Domino's website, there's all the different types of technologies that they're experimenting with. And this is something that perhaps Pizza Hut and some of the other competitors are not doing. And there's also examples in the US where you can order a pizza through your Xbox, through your car, and there's other types of things as well. So they're becoming more a technology company where they're building up a lot of data on what your preferences are, what are the pizzas that you like, particularly if you order on a certain type of day, and how you can make these orders very quick and easy. So this issue, this benefit, their value proposition of convenience and simplification in the ordering process is becoming a sort of a battleground here for these pizza delivery organisations. So coming to this chart here, but we're not going to go through that because there's, you guys can't see that, but I think we're going to moving along with time. But the third thing I wanted to talk about was just the importance of segmentation. And some of the flawed assumptions now that we can't rely on things like age, gender, your age cohort. We often refer to people as, oh, you're a millennial, so we put you in that category because you're all the same. Or you're a baby boomer, so we label you the same, we put you in that group, that bucket. That's very flawed assumptions in doing that. Because of all the data that we have now available, where we can now get to know profiles of customers beyond simply just your age and your gender or belonging to an age cohort. This was an interesting little tweet and debate that's going on in the marketing area over the last few weeks, and challenging this notion of age cohorts. And the tweet here was from a practitioner that said, talking about millennials is entirely stupid. The idea that 2.5 billion people, so all the people in the world who fall into this millennial bracket, have any shared traits is absolute crap. Would be far more useful to look at contemporary behaviour and expectations for all ages, because some millennials and baby boomers or Generation X people born in different times, they can share characteristics. And when you go into an Apple store, you don't expect to see young people. You see people of all ages. So just to simply rely on someone who's in an age cohort being the millennials, well then that's the person we're talking to. That's a flawed assumption. And what caught my attention is I follow Peter Fader. He's another famous marketing academic from Wharton Business School in the United States. And he replied to this thread and said, great thread, all that millennial nonsense is 1, a terrible waste of corporate resources, 2, an embarrassment to the marketing profession, and 3, an insult to the heterogeneous consumers who are labelled by it. In other words, heterogeneous means different. Customers are different. And we can't just simply rely on these old segmentation bases of age and gender and income, where you live, all these type of things. There's far more to it than that in understanding the customer, because the more information we have about each of these profiles, we can be far more accurate with our communications or the way in which we design products to hit the bullseye, because that's what we're trying to do. That's the importance of market segmentation. We break up the market and we put people in that exhibit similar characteristics. We know a lot about them, what media they consume, what websites they visit, what their expectations or benefits sought out of your products, and then we target them with specific messages so that we hit the bullseye like this. Whereas if you rely on simple segmentation bases, like age, gender, for instance, it's like this image here, this cartoon here. We really have no idea who we're targeting. Very flawed assumptions in doing that. We're wasting corporate resources. This particular framework here is an example of all the different ways we can segment segment customers. And I'll leave that for you guys to review, because I know it's hard to see on the screen and we're sort of falling short of time. But many, many different ways. And I wanted to just talk quickly a bit about Netflix. What's Netflix doing in this space? Because their whole business is built around segmentation. That's their source of competitive advantage. the more better, more effective ways in which they can serve you your content, that's where they're going to win against their competitors of Stan and Foxtel and many other providers. So they've been very good at providing customers with what they want. One could argue that their value proposition here, it's about convenience, accessibility, fun. That's what the word hedonic means, excitement, when you watch the films that you really enjoy. But it's also a social experience. You can rate the amount of enjoyment that you had with that title and share that with other people through the Netflix platform. Satisfaction is very high, so entertainment experience exceeding people's expectations. But how have they done that? So again, the notion of importance of segmentation, knowing the customer. And their recommendation engine is very critical. So the more that you watch Netflix, they're learning your habits, they're learning your preferences. What genres of films do you like? Because you might like a diverse range. They know a lot, they know your age, your gender, so there's that type of demographic information they know. But the more you're consuming the content, the more it's learning about you, these algorithms that learn about you. This is a little bit important because it needs to know about you to serve you what you would like. And now we've reached a point that 80% of the content watched on Netflix is influenced by the recommendation system that serves you those suggested titles. So is anybody a Netflix customer here? Okay, so an example of fragmented content. We've got, nearly everybody in the room had their hand up there. What's interesting though, that segmentation accuracy, so the ability to serve content that it thinks has a higher probability that you're really going to enjoy because it knows how long people watch those films. Whether you've watched it all the way or 50%, it knows all these things about us. So the data, this is where this data capability is coming into play. So what are the lessons? So customer behavioural patterns is now informing creative decisions now for Netflix and the approval of original content development in-house. So now that you're all Netflix customers that I know, you're very familiar with the Netflix originals. So this is content that Netflix has produced, yeah. But when Netflix produced House of Cards, it knew from its library and the data that it collected from its customers that the most watched films, like the whole duration of the film, were films by director David Fincher. Now he directed Seven, Fight Club, Panic Room, Zodiac, Gone Girl, and they said, and Kevin Spacey, all his films had very long watch times. So what we're going to do is combine those two, the actor with the director, and we're not even going to put a pilot in. We're not going to commission one episode. We're going to book 2 seasons of 26 episodes straight away because we've got a lot of confidence in our data that says anything with Kevin Spacey and a movie directed by David Fincher has a high viewership. And that's what they did. Now, I know there's issues with Kevin Spacey recently, but the House of Cards has been a wildly successful series for them. But when we compare the success rate of Netflix original shows are 80%, so they have high viewership and a lot of them go into a second season, and we can compare that to new shows on network television that has a success rate of around 30 to 40%. So when we look at the data, we can now start to make creative decisions on what we think have a high probability of working and being watched by all of you guys. But there's more. So Netflix has also learnt to optimize the cover of the titles that you see. So you know how we see the preview, like on screen. So through all the data that it acquires from all of us, it learnt that more characters that were shown on the title slide, like here, orange is the new black, it created confusion for people. There's just a lot of elements there, a lot of characters. And what they found is when they simplified those title cards that had a lot more viewership, people started to then watch the films more. So that's why we see in subsequent seasons, we just see the one actress there. Also, they learnt that these title cards need to feature more recognisable villains for kids, but also for action films. So this is the Dragon TV series on here. And we've got some of the characters and things of this nature. Again, we've only seen a focus on 1 or 2. And the villains also play a role in the title cards to grab people's attention, to get them more interested in potentially watching the film. So coming back to this importance of segmentation bases, so geography, age and gender, this is a quote from the vice president of Netflix. We put all that in the garbage heap. It's not about geography, age and gender. Instead, viewers are grouped into clusters almost exclusively by common tastes and their behavioural patterns and how they watch those films. And And there's different clusters of customers. So some of you may be in one cluster, another cluster, other cluster, and you're all exhibiting similar characteristics that we can group you by. And then when we know those clusters, we can then serve you content that we think is going to have a high probability of success. And their Netflix homepages highlight the relatively small slice of content that matches their taste profile. And some examples of this, they've learnt that when we look at the title cards that we show you, when we've got psychological thrillers, we use the same colour spectrum. So there's a lot of darks and greys. This is some analysis that Netflix has released. So if you're someone and you're in a cluster that likes these psychological thrillers, well, we have colours that are very similar in the presentation of their title cards to better appeal to you. So you may then go, oh, okay, this looks interesting, I might watch this particular show. And we've just got an example in orange. This is Arrested Development title card with the colours that they use, very bright, because it's a comedy. So the colours then are congruent with the notions of quality, of comedy. So if we do our job, and this chart is just more talking about, we've analysed those needs and wants in the marketplace. We're now starting to think about what are the segments we're serving, what's our value proposition, how are we going to communicate that. We then think about our marketing mix, our 4 Ps, product, price, place, promotion. If we're doing all of these things, giving what customers want, we should have satisfied customers. They're becoming loyal customers, and where that's important, because this is where we're now starting to extract that value for the firm. This is the revenue starting to flow to us. And then hopefully we're increasing our market share. We're becoming then the leader in the marketplace. Now, that was the sort of the content that I had from some marketing frameworks and things like that. What I'd like to share with you guys now is just some insights I think could be helpful for your major assignment. Again, I don't know the detail behind it, so I could be way off, but I'll rely on Nick to sort of steer me in a bit of a corrective direction. But the first one I thought would be you're dealing with the brain drain of Newcastle and things of how can we enhance the prosperity of the region and things of that nature. Well, the branding of places, how do we sort of communicate what Newcastle's all about? What's Newcastle, the Hunter region's value proposition? Why should an investor, an entrepreneur, an organisation relocating or setting up an office here, what's in it for them? What's the value for them to be located here? Does the world know that? This isn't a new phenomenon. Many governments and countries practice place branding and how we brand those regions and cities. Newcastle has done it recently. Some of you may be familiar with this. There's a website available on the development of this campaign that was done a few years ago, and there's some videos there that sit up on the website that you can access. But it's very much more a tourism sort of messaging around that. There is some business stuff there, but a better example I could share with you is Invest New Zealand, and what they do is this website, this portal, is all about how they can try and encourage people to set up businesses here. And some of their messaging: invest and innovate in New Zealand, our unmatched quality of life and thriving but stable business environment make New Zealand an ideal destination for savvy investors and entrepreneurs. And then it elaborates a little bit further on. On the left-hand side of that particular website screenshot, there's more information that can be accessed for a prospective investor, entrepreneur, someone who's wanting to locate their business, whatever the case is. So thinking about place branding, how can we further communicate the value of people locating their organisations here in Newcastle? Because there is some of this shifting perceptions. A lot of people, when you talk to other parts of the country, their ideas of Newcastle, steelworks, it's a steel city. You guys do things like the coal exporting and mining and things of that nature, and that's true. That's a sort of big part of our local economy, but there's many other new things now. We're a far more diverse economy than what many think. So examples, there's a growing tourism industry. We've now got our supercars, which is great. So there's all these different activities going on. New space. The university's making huge investments in the city, not just here in New Space, but if you've been watching the Newcastle Herald, there's going to be more signs of life going in Honeysuckle, and more buildings, other schools and faculties moving into the city that I think is going to be very, very good for our city and our region. So there's a lot of things in place there. And yeah, there's a very much an entrepreneurship and a growing innovation ecosystem forming within the city as well. So we have a facility just down the road, 365, and it's a sort of an incubator, co-working share space, trying to help a lot of startup organisations. So that's affiliated with the university, and we can bring researchers in to help startup entrepreneurs with their ventures and things of that nature to try and help them succeed. I think there's another location up in Muswellbrook as well. So connecting with the Upper Hunter is also important to us too. But what are we doing at the university? And I thought I'd share with you some of the things that we're doing at the university level, faculty level, because we're part of the Faculty Business and Law, and then what I'm doing at the discipline level of marketing. So I'm talking about the 365, but we've also got a location just down here on Hunter Street, but we're also located, this is a screenshot on the right there, Williamtown. So we have like a little small presence there, tapping into that aerospace defence developments that's going up on there, and we've got researchers up in that space. The image on the left-hand side is just a workshop that's going on. We've got entrepreneurs there in the audience, some of our researchers giving some workshops that they're doing that could help them, as well as we invite guest speakers, successful entrepreneurs into that location and invite the local public too. Jack Ma, does anybody know who Jack Ma is? So he's the owner of Alibaba, he's a billionaire. And he has a nice close relationship with Newcastle, believe it or not. He visited Newcastle many years ago, the Morley family that he'd met, and I think it was in China where they met. And then the Morleys invited Jack to come out and spend some time in Australia and Newcastle and Sydney and things of that nature. He never forgot that. They had a very strong relationship over time, and he has such an affinity for Newcastle that there's now, I think, a $25 million scholarship and a program set in place to send students from all walks of life in different schools and faculties within the uni over to like a cultural immersion tour over in China, just to open up their thinking and more intercultural exchange and things of that nature. So it's very good. We've also got, obviously, new space, being able to help us better engage with industry, and there's all kinds of activities that go on now because we're now physically located here. The university is trying to do, not just in our faculty, but many other faculties, working with industry. What's important, where I think it's helpful for your assignment, is we're a one university town. So for us our region to move further forward, it's important that the university and all its different faculties are interlocking with different segments of industry, not just, say, business, but health, engineering, manufacturing, all different sectors, so that we can better make impact in translating the research that we're doing to helping us become more innovative and productive in our region. And then at a discipline level, what I've done within the last 6 months, I've formed an external advisory board where I've approached senior marketing leaders from some of the bigger organisations in town. We've got Enigma Advertising Agency, the Greater Bank, One Steel. We've got some entrepreneurs, Sarah Dennis from Fresh Marketing. We've got Joel Goodsir, who's our chair from Inspirations Paint, that help shape our marketing program. How can we do better in giving our local students a high quality experience in the marketing area? So we've run some events, we're mentoring, giving advice on how they can help with their careers, but we're also going to roll out a series of initiatives like site visits, getting students out and about to inside organisations to see how marketing is done in those different organisations, having guest lecture spots, work integrated learning opportunities and things of that nature. Another thing that I can announce tonight is we're going to be a sponsor of the Lunatic Society Newey Awards. If you're not familiar with the Lunatic Society, they're a sort of an industry group, about 100 members, very much focused on the entrepreneurship, digital innovation area. And what they do is each year they have an awards night where they like to celebrate excellence in different award categories, best digital agency, most creative solution in different sectors such as renewable energies, best tourism solution and so forth. So it's celebrating all things creativity, digital innovation and entrepreneurship. So we're sponsoring that event, and they also have live stream newscasts out of the Foghorn Brewery about 5 times a year. So they all get together. It's a bit like a news show, talk show. They'll bring in special guests, panel of speakers. where people from the public can freely attend, so you can all go. But we think this is a very important activity that needs to be supported and continued. So we're going to be a sponsor of that event to make sure it succeeds and continues, because they're a very non-profit. These are people who are just doing this for the love of what they do. So we want to be a part of that and continue that to thrive and survive. And what I wanted to finish up on is looking to this idea of place branding. And obviously there's other regions ahead of us, and I'm going to talk about the Gold Coast and what they've been doing. And the video that I'm going to show is how business leaders in the Gold Coast area have obviously thought about all these issues and how they can then project themselves to the world, and encouraging people to consider the Gold Coast to locate their businesses, but also domestically as well. And I think this is just something that we could think about, because the messages that you'll see, it's like looking into the future of what Newcastle could be like. Because if you're familiar with the Gold Coast and what's happening up there, they've had light rail, they've had investments in their university, where they've got great presence there of Griffith University, and all these infrastructure connecting their city. So watching the video, and you'll see some discussion points by Bernard Salt, who's a demographer, who I think has obviously been a big part of informing their plan in mapping out what does the future of the Gold Coast look like. He's an important person because you can follow Bernard Salt. He writes in the Australian newspaper. You see him on television as a social commentator talking about new trends that are coming down the line and how it affects regions and cities around Australia. So the video ends. So the issue I have, or the challenge for you, would be, well, what does Newcastle's future look like in this region by 2030, 2050? You're emerging leaders, so in 10 years' time, you're going to be really in those very senior, influential positions. So what does the Newcastle story look like? Because many regions around Australia are doing just this. Okay, so I'm not sure if this is relevant to the major assignment, but this is something I think that our region needs. It's a value proposition, a story on how we can invite more economic activity, retain our talented people, but encourage more economic activity across different industries here in the region. So that's it for me. That's all the content I have for you guys, but I'd invite any questions. Yep.
I'm interested. There might be a simple answer to this question, so give me a faint look if that's the case.
Sure.
The difference between business to consumer and business to business marketing. You pulled out ant control. We don't. Our users are different to our customers. The same is true for dog food, but we do face certain marketing challenges that come with that. So I'm interested in what other characteristics are around B2B rather than B2C.
Yeah, well, B2B is interesting. Being in an IBM, it was very B2B, sector, very centric in that space. And I guess there's a lot of differences between B2B and B2C, but understanding your, say, segments, the characteristics we've sort of talked about here, they're very much focused on that business to consumer aspect. With B2B, it's been a while since I've been in industrial marketing, but the practice of marketing, you're still doing the similar things, still looking at what is your value proposition, still thinking about what segments you're serving, what does your marketing mix look like. It may be the nature of some of your tactics are very different. So if you're selling to individuals with razor blades, for instance, a lot of focus could be on online channel. But with AMP control, you may not necessarily be sort of focused on that channel as a way of communicating with the customer or delivering products and services. So with One Steel's case with Sally Eagleton, there's a very big focus on sales and other types of marketing, events, trade fairs. That's a very different route to the customer versus what we would see with consumer goods, Domino's and things of that nature. So the nature and the practice of marketing are very different for sure. So I don't know if I've answered your question, but in terms of the characteristics of marketing are very different. But some of the frameworks are still the same. So that marketing planning process, developing a value proposition, segmentation effort, market mix, developing at that, and then executing on that plan. They're still the same. I think you could have. It's just one of the things we like about the value proposition, like from Man Control, is you could say you've got that shortened version where I think there was something about engineering unique solutions, something, 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 and it's a short sentence, and I saw that in different parts of the website. So that may be that short elevator pitch. The bit that I saw, and that's just taken from the website there, but there were some qualification statements. So you say you're good at this is the benefits you're delivering, but how are you doing that? And that's what I like where it says to achieve this. So you had that opening statement, but then it was, how do you achieve it then? So you're working with your customers, your partners. So in other words, you're co-creating with them to offer a more personalised solution. That's a good thing. The other qualification statement was, but we do this by drawing on the multidisciplinary resources that we have. Now, other competitors can't probably replicate that. So that's a point of differentiation. So that's why I'm saying that's a good thing, because with a value proposition like AMP Control, for instance, it acts like the guardrail for the company. This is the space we're playing in, and the whole company knows this. So if I'm talking with one of the employees from AMP Control, you might not articulate it like that, but you have some sense of this is what we're about. This is how we're positioned in the marketplace. Because once you sort that out, that flows through all the different components you saw in that organising framework. What markets then are we targeting there? How do we design the marketing mix, the 4 Ps or the 7 Ps, whatever the case is? So it guides all the future decisions that need to be made in that marketing plan.
So would it be fair to say that notion of a value proposition having to be, 24 words or less is false?
No, because this is where we get into a few more other complex issues with marketing, because then we'll start to move in things like brand mantras, as we say, that's the more shortened version. Like Disney's brand mantra is, fun, family, entertainment. That's what we're about. It's got to be fun, it's family oriented, and it's got to be exciting, entertaining for people. Now that's not a value proposition. That's what we'll say a brand mantra. That's that 30-second short thing of that's what we're about. But underneath that, it's something that's a little bit more well thought out and articulated. And that's where I think AMP Controls is pretty good.
I think ours would be the power through innovation. Sure.
That's a good example of like a brand mantra, as we would describe it. And that's things you see in advertising. Yeah. Whereas the value, that's what you see in a strategic plan, like a marketing plan. Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah. So if you did a Masters of Marketing, you'd learn all about this stuff. You would know, that's a brand mantra, like what was it? Power through innovation.
I mean, it's quite intelligent as well, like power, where
Yep.
business.
And they're things that you would see in communications, because that's easily, I can easily understand that, I get it. The only thing is, it's like, well, does your competitor say the same thing, but just using different words, Not really, yeah. But that's where the value proposition part can come in, because it articulates in a little bit more detail what you do, what are your benefits, but then how you differentiate your way from other competitors. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. Yep. Cheers.